Hi there, Let's Talk Sports fans. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let's Talk New York Sports. And there's only one person I'm going to talk New York sports with. It's, of course, my co host, my good friend, Keith Engle from TGI Sports Talk. Thanks for joining me today.
Always my pleasure, Dan, to talk to my the best friend I have across the pond here, as it were, in the great UK. So it's great to be with you and talk New York sports and stay up to date. And glad to be with you every Friday.
Same here. I know you've got a lot going on at the moment. I'm glad to have you on. How did your show with Carlos go? Did it revitalize you? Did it stress you out? How did it go?
No, it was it revitalized me a little bit. We had our moments this morning talking about the Knicks and the Yankees and the Mets, and Carlos wants to fire everybody. Why Gallant shouldn't have been fired by the Rangers? He thinks getting to the finals, the conference finals one year and making the playoffs the next year with a team that was nowhere before he got there doesn't count for anything. So anyway, we had a good time this morning, and one thing I would like to throw out there too, because I don't think I've mentioned this to you, we had to delay our interview with Delvin Williams, former All-Pro running back with the 49ers and Dolphins. So we actually taped the episode last night, so it's airing tonight, premiering tonight, and it's a must see interview. We talk a lot about his career, obviously, and Delvin had a very good career in the NFL with both teams. But the last half hour of this interview is must watch to learn how a billion-dollar corporation like the NFL mistreats the people they should be treating the best, the people who drive that money in the door for them, their players, at least their former players. You have to watch this to, and you won't even believe it then, what goes on. So please, if you don't catch it live tonight at, I think I scheduled for 6:00 tonight. If you don't catch it live, make sure you catch it on Let's Talk Sports on another time. Great interview, and Delvin's really well spoken on this topic, and it's something you must see and you won't believe a lot of the things you'll hear.
Yeah, I remember saying when I booked him in that I think it'd be a great interview because just in our initial message, he was quite frank would be the word. So I thought it'd be a good interview. Very nice man as well from our exchanges. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, definitely, and it's not just the NFL that is left these guys out to dry. It's their own players association. The NFL Players Association doesn't do anything for guys who are not active players. I mean, it's just crazy, and you won't believe some of the things you hear. So please tune in.
Yeah, please do. I mean, comes across as a very warm man.
Yeah,
When I was first speaking with him, he said, "Love the story. Tell me where you need to be. I'll turn up." He also helped out on our charity stream, and he's keen to stay involved with Let's Talk Sports wherever I need him. So I love that, and as you said, very good career. So I'm sure we'll be an asset.
Judy, my friend Judy Phillips typing in invisible ink again. Good evening, Judy. Good to have you with us. Rick Sherlock is with us. Hello, Rick. Same prayers for Dan. Carlos is the king of cliches. Oh, I did this little thing riff last weekend. Before we get started, I know you want to get going on New York sports, but I'll tell you a little story. We got going. I think Rick kicked it off last week. These guys, a lot of my followers are not big LeBron fans. So Rick had come up with a funny, LeBron, whatever, right? So a nickname. And then I challenged him to come up with more and more creative ones. We must have had 15 or 16 different ones before the show was over. It was very funny. So we had a lot of fun. I'm probably not as funny as I think it is, but it was very funny.
And Rick, thanks for checking in. It's always good to have you in the comments as well. So yeah, thanks for Good. And
Very loyal
everyone,
follower for sure.
uh, before we get started, if you're watching this through Let's Talk Sports, please head over to TGI Sports Talk. Follow Keith. Does a lot of great interviews. I feel we're partners in crime in many things. By supporting Keith, you're supporting me. So please do head over and support what Keith does.
Yeah, don't say you're my partner in crime, man. I'll throw you right under the bus when the cops show up. I'll tell you that right now.
I was going to say, but you're on your own where the groundhog is. So.
Okay. Oh gosh, that was a couple of the LeBron. That was only a. That's just a taste. LeBaby and LaFlop was a couple of the LeBron nicknames last week.
LeBron is an interesting subject for me. I have a love-hate relationship with him because
Yeah,
I don't love maybe some of his control and stuff with the roster, but I will say this for him, what he does in the community, and don't get me wrong, he does make himself rich in doing so as well, striking up
Mhm.
partnerships. But I would have liked Michael Jordan's, in my opinion, by far a greater player than LeBron is, but I would have liked him to be maybe more active like LeBron is. I do understand it was a different age, but that being said, I do respect LeBron for that. And I was speaking on an episode this morning about talking about the Mavs and Luca. I do feel if Luca was a bit more aggressive with the front office saying, come on, we need guys, keep Bronson around. Perhaps he could have been done with a little bit more like LeBron. So it's sort of
It's possible.
swings and roundabouts. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of have the same kind of feelings about LeBron. I mean, he's a great player, and sometimes he just needs to shut up and whatever. But he's a great player. You can't listen. He took some very inferior Cleveland teams to the championship series and actually won over a better team overall. So him and my other favorite player there. I won't mention his name tonight, so we don't get me going.
I do get that. And look, one thing I do like about LeBron is he is fairly active in player rights. Something
Yeah,
different sport. We just talked about that. I will say this: some of these star players refuse to be involved, but I will say that for LeBron, he does fight for the lesser players.
he can afford to be generous with China's money. I don't think he
Well,
needs
there is that.
money. I'm not sure that he needs China's money. That's the thing. So that's one of my things. That's one of the rubs with me. He doesn't need to get in bed with the Chinese because he doesn't need their money. So you know, whatever. It is
I
what it
agree.
is.
In a few years' time, he might be able to buy China. Who can say?
I will tell you this: I would love to have seen the Knicks be able to bring him here at any point in his career. It never did happen because stars didn't align. Not that they didn't try, but I would have been a big LeBron fan if he'd been in New York. I can tell you right now.
I agree. And my hunch is looking at interviews is he wanted to be a Nick, but he didn't have faith in them getting out of their own way.
Agree.
That's just my hunch in how he speaks about the Knicks. He doesn't speak sort of to denigrate them. I think he would have quite liked to play at Madison Square Garden as a home player.
Oh, I'm sure he would have, but the problem is, Guitar Jimmy there is in charge, and that's what turns a lot of guys away.
Yeah, I
So
agree. Look, who knows? Perhaps Bronny will get drafted by the Knicks, and we'll get I don't know, 55-year-old LeBron. I joke and jest with the age, but you get.
hey, don't make fun of old guys. Stop it.
um. So, Keith, probably the biggest thing going around but NFL at the moment is its schedule release. Are you a big guy for that? Some people waiting on tender hooks. How I feel about it is, it's nice to see who you got week one, see where the journey begins. But I couldn't care what order the games come in because you're going to play them all eventually anyway.
The NFL does a tremendous job of PR in keeping themselves relevant year round. This is a story that really means nothing. You got to play whoever they put on your schedule. As you said, when it is not a big deal. What time of day it is isn't a big deal. I know fans, I guess it's there's some prestige to playing in prime time and whatnot. But the whole rankings of who's got the toughest schedule, it's irrelevant. It matters not one bit to me. What the Eagles have the toughest schedule. I think it was the Dolphins were second, the Patriots third. It means nothing. Those teams, those records are all 0-0 when the season starts. That means nothing to me. I mean, we don't know how these teams are going to be this year. I mean, the Jets are on the Patriots schedule this year, and they're probably going to be better. So their schedule is actually tougher than what you're telling me it is. And years after, say when Tom Brady left the Patriots, when they were 12-4, they weren't going to be that good, but they're on somebody's schedule the next year with a 12-4 record, counting against how hard their schedule is. And it's a lot of hyperbole that is really means nothing at the end of the day. You just got to go out and play the games they put in front of you. That's all.
Audrey, I mean, if we start with the Patriots, how you feeling about your week 1 matchup? Are you okay with it?
I think it's an interesting matchup. Getting the Eagles in week 1, getting them at home is a plus, and getting them. I had a little debate, I guess, with the Philly sports guy this morning in a way that, I think they're going to be honoring Tom Brady that night. I would not be shocked if they're retiring his jersey. Even it hasn't been announced that way, but they are honoring him with a ceremony before the game. Jamie thinks that teams that have those types of ceremonies beforehand typically lose those games. I don't know where that stat comes from. I don't know that there's a stat you can find. My guess is my team will be more fired up by that. The crowd will be fired up, and that gives us an advantage. Whether we take advantage of it is a different story. But I want to get the Eagles early, and I want to get them at home. So I'll take that.
Audrey, like the emotion of these things might carry them over. And also, one other thing is that I think they've done a fairly job at replacing some of the talent on their defense, but it's going to be a different defense. Will there be some miscommunication? Because I know we have Camp, but Camp can't substitute for games, so I wouldn't discount that. The bonus the Patriots have is they really haven't had too many changes on the roster, especially what you'll consider the starting players. So will that carry the emotion and maybe some of the Eagles' growing pains? I wouldn't discount this. And also, I think Mr. Belichick might like being the hero on Tom's big night as well.
Oh, I wouldn't think that would disappoint him at all, for sure. And as you said, I mean, getting a team as good as the Eagles are early in the season before they've clicking on all cylinders is very important in my mind. So, and it would really set the Patriots up with some momentum. I mean, they've got a tough first 4 games. They've got, if I remember right, they've got I still have it up here. They've got the Eagles. They've got the Dolphins, both at home. That's a plus. They've got the Jets in week 3, and they got the Cowboys. Both of those games on the road the first 4 weeks. So, Patriots are going to have a tough jump out of the gate.
Yeah, I agree, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I know Jets fans are in a panic about the start they have, but we'll get to that in a minute. But I use the same argument for the Patriots because the Patriots are generally slow starters. So is it a bad thing to have the harder games at the beginning and have a late surge as potential? And these strength of schedules mean nothing. This is the NFL. The bottom teams can beat the top teams on a one-off game and vice versa. So I think you just play who you play and see how it may fall, if you will.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you 100%. Patriots have been known to get off the slow starts. They could be 1-3 after this. I know some people are telling me they'll be 0-4, whatever. I'm thinking they'll get away 1-3 at worst, and I don't think that's the end of the world. It's a long season, and I'm confident this team is going to have a bounce back season. And Rick is right. Philly is Georgia Bulldog North for sure.
Yeah, but Georgia, I think I don't blame them because if you accept it's a historic defense or team in general, the best look, you can't. It doesn't always translate into the pros, but the best chance you've got is identifying the best talent. So there's nothing wrong with that either. And yeah, I've said this a few. I know everyone's expecting the Patriots to be bottom of the division, have a fullback. One, we've talked about them actually having an OC this year, but apart from that, I've seen too many times of what Bill Belichick to do. I would back him no matter what players I've got on the roster to get them up to 7 or 8 wins just through his sheer savviness, if that makes sense. So I
Hey,
just think he'll beat, if nothing else, beat the bad coaches to
look,
get them up to around 500.
they won 8 games last year, and they could have won. They probably should have won 10. To be quite honest with you, with 2 games that they kind of gave away, at least 2 games. But again, let's just say they won 8 because that's what they were supposed to win. Uh, with a totally dysfunctional offensive staff, an offensive game plan. So you've got a real guy who can focus on the offense. And don't tell me Bill didn't have to get focused on the offense a lot more than he would normally have last year, which takes his focus away from his own specialty, which is defense. So the offense is going to be better because of Bill O'Brien. The defense is going to be better because Bill Belichick has got to spend a lot less time game day and preparing for games with the offense. And this team, to me, with Bill Belichick with that off his shoulders and a real offensive staff and play callers, game planning, whatever else you want to add in there, it's worth 2 games right there. I've got 10 wins there. That's without anybody getting any better, except maybe Mac Jones because he'll be better with the offense. But anybody in this division, Dan, I think could finish first, and anybody could finish last. I really believe that. I really believe
Yeah,
that.
I do agree with that. I think it's going to be interesting, and Bill's can be motivated. We talked about this. If he wants to stay to get that record, they need to have a bounce back this year. And I think he might. Everyone's talking about everyone else. He won't want the Jets making the playoffs. So those games he'll be ultra motivated. So I'm intrigued. He could be the party spoiler in this division
Could
because
be.
not everyone can be good
Yeah.
who they say will be. So he could decide the balance of this division.
I agree. And Rick, just you tell Waldo that I'm going to start taking wagers starting this week. And if Bailey Zappi is the starting quarterback, I'll pay you off in steak sandwiches or whatever you want to pay. And you know that I'll make good on my wager, like Mr. Mancini. But Bailey Zappi's going to look. Any competition in this camp is going to be um, cosmetic at best. Mac Jones is the
Yeah.
quarterback of this team.
Well, I'll put it this way. Compare Bailey to Mike White. Absent of health, who is the better quarterback? I would probably say Mike White is based on what we're seeing of the two teams, and he is not a starter in this league
No,
at all. So Bailey isn't either.
no, we've seen Bailey Zappi play a game and a half. That's it, and he played really well in one of those games, and he played kind of bad in the other one. So I don't know I don't even know what he's got. I know what I have in Mac Jones. I got a guy who can
Yeah,
be a decent NFL quarterback. He's not top echelon. Doesn't need to be though.
yeah, I agree. So before we talk about the Jet schedule, one game I wanted to pinpoint what people are a bit surprised. is might be lost in the shuffle is the Giants versus the Jets. Are you surprised that wasn't a prime time game? Because both teams are good. Obviously, there's the Aaron Rodgers factor. Would you have thought that would be a Monday night game or something like that? Because I've had this question posed to me a few times.
I am a little surprised that that's not a primetime game, or at least the 4:30 window, uh,
Yeah.
at least not 1 o'clock. So I'm a little surprised at that. Again, remember there's a limit on how many games these teams can play in prime time. So that might have played into this. Uh, Off the top of my head, I don't know who the other teams. I know the Jets are at the max, I think, of 5 games. And I don't know who those other teams are without off the top of my head. But yes, this would seem to be natural for a primetime matchup with these teams theoretically on an upswing, and we'll certainly know by October 29th, whether these teams are going to have the types of years their fans think they will or not. So I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, the obvious one to switch it off is they play the Browns towards the end of the season as a primetime game, and the Browns probably will be better than last year, but and I know they are a historic team, but I just feel the Giants should add more as a few experience rather than Jets Browns.
I'm looking at now that I'm looking at the schedule a little bit, and you're right. They got the Chiefs, which should be in prime time. I agree. The Chargers, I can see that one, but the Raiders and the Browns kind of stick out to me. Like I think maybe you could have swapped the Giants into one of those games.
Yeah, I agree. I also agree with you with that Chiefs game. That will be definitely be an interesting game. I think probably the reason why they didn't do that is that's pretty close to when they're on prime time with the Bills, so possibly they didn't want to do it so close together would be my hunch.
That's entirely possible.
Um, so a lot of fans are in a panic about that first month of the season. I'm not as much because look, you're going to face everyone anyway. So,
Mhm.
and another reason is that's what you bring in Aaron Rodgers to beat these tougher teams. So, to me, if he's doing his job, we should have every chance. Not so much against the Chiefs, but obviously, I'm not going to sweat against the Cowboys, for instance, because I think that's pretty even money. I'm not afraid of that game. Sorry, Alan, but I don't think that first month's terrible because I could see them going 2-2 that first month.
Yeah, I mean, look at you get away 2-2, you get nothing to really be concerned about, and they could get away better than that. I mean, people get too worked up about because when these stretches happen in the middle of the season, nobody thinks twice about it. We look at the beginning, and we all we get all worked up that this team's in trouble, that team's got it easy, and nobody knows whether they've got hard games or easy games until they happen. They just don't know. I don't know that the Bills will. To me, the Bills could take a giant step backwards for all I know. The Dallas Cowboys could take a giant step backwards. So, you know, we don't know until we start seeing them play.
Yeah, I agree. I think this division's going to be interesting because everyone's saying it's the Bills to lose, and I do understand recent history tells you that. But if Tua's healthy, I'm kind of think they could be more explosive than the Bills. I don't think they've done a good job of adding to this offense, and this defense have lost some of their pieces, and we'd yet to see if the pieces they brought in can fill that void.
Yeah, I might be inclined if you told me Tua was going to play 15 games, start 15 games, and complete 15 games, I might be inclined to say the Dolphins would be the favorite here. But again, we don't have a crystal ball. I don't. You got to name a favorite, and if you have to stick with the front runner, which has been the Bills, until you beat them. These teams have to show they can beat the Bills and knock them off their pedestal. But
Yeah, I
any one
agree.
of the three can, in my mind.
I agree. And look, the Bills, I want them to show me something this year because everyone anointed them Super Bowl favorites last year, and they never really clicked. Which you can get away with that for one season, but if this team's going to keep their reputation this year, they need to set. They're no longer this plucky upstarter team.
Mhm.
They are meant to be a division giant, so I want to see them be dominant this year.
Yeah, I mean, they need to take a step. They need to show they can beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. They need to, advance to a Super Bowl this year. In my mind, if people are going to not continue to think there's something lacking here.
I'd rate and look, they're gonna have problems soon. More players gonna want paying, and that safety duo that's starting to get a bit on the older side. So that
Mhm.
window's closing. So not only do they have to uh bring it this year, but they're gonna have to start developing these new pieces because the last 2 or 3 years, the younger pieces they have added ain't had the same effect that their previous classes have. So this coaching staff needs to up their game, not just the players.
Agreed. They're going to waste, Josh Allen's career because we don't talk about it a lot. But how long is his career going to be at as high a level as he's been playing the way that he plays? Again, anything could happen to him at any time the way he plays the game of football. So, there's a sense of urgency here that this team needs to address.
I'd really look a very good point because everyone talks about how short of lifespan will Lamar have. Well, I don't see Josh Allen at 35 hurdling over
No,
linebackers' head.
no, his game will have to change and maybe change soon if he's going to stick around that long at all. And Rick thinks that the defense of the Bills will have instant improvement with Leslie Frazier on a sabbatical here.
Yeah, but will it? Because the thing is, and I believe I'm right in saying this, that McDermott's taken over the defensive play calling. Is that right?
I think that's the way I understand it. Yes.
Well, that's another thing on his plate. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought he looked disinterested at times. That game slide the last season and a half. Now he's got more on his plate. So there's a reason why you don't often see coaches call defensive plays, and that's to get off their plate. So it might actually be a distraction, not an improvement.
Certainly it could. I mean, most successful coaches are more, CEOs than they are, they're delegators. They aren't doing all the play calling. There's some successful ones still. Sean Payton still does most of the play calling, and I'm sure he will in Denver. But most of the guys, to be able to really be good, have to delegate those authorities. And so, even Bill Belichick does that. He does not call every defensive signal, or certainly not every offensive signal. He's got the last say, as any head coach would, but he doesn't. And he's involved in the game planning, which is much more important. Um, and yes, I think otherwise you're going to be lose focus on the bigger picture.
Yeah, I agree. And before we move on, another problem what might arise is what message does it send to your defensive staff? It says he doesn't trust us.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does that send to his staff either?
Well, you saw, and I missed this example. I guess when I mentioned Sean Payton, I guess a more obvious example and more successful example is Andy Reid. He still calls all the offensive plays, and it's cost his offensive coordinator probably a chance at head coaching jobs, enough so that he's moved on because he needs to get out of Andy Reid's shadow to be able to make the jump to the next level.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I'm going to be watching the Bills this year for a lot of reasons, just see how they grow, because we ain't really seeing has the loss of some of their guys on and off the field affected the team.
Hmm.
Everyone always loses them. You've got to back up your skills and replace them. So we will see. Before we talk baseball, Keith, the New York Knicks are deep in the playoff series now, one a game back. I believe it was Tuesday, tonight,
Wednesday.
game six. This is
Yeah.
very going to be a very important game. I'm not hugely confident they ain't won a game in Miami, but as my NBA co-host made a point to me, Miami hasn't lost a game in the playoffs at home, so they didn't lose a game to the Bucks at home, and they haven't to the Knicks. So, whereas you might say, "Oh, it's going to be a tough task," they are due a loss at home is an argument what can be put to you. So I don't. I've got more confidence in Miami given what we've seen from them at home, but that is a valid argument. Is it time for them to lose one?
Well,
What do you
listen,
think on it?
if I'm putting all my stock in the odds of them losing a home game, that's all the Knicks got going for them. Then I don't hold out a lot of hopes for the Knicks winning tonight. But I do think the Knicks will give a better effort. My problem with the last game in Miami, which I think was Sunday, the Knicks just didn't show a lot of fight, and I don't. That hasn't been this team, especially this second half of the season. They've had very few nights like that, and you shouldn't be doing that in the playoffs. I mean, not that they didn't care. It felt like they got punched in the mouth early in that game, and they just could not fight their way out of it. Now they played shorthanded, and again, it's hard to say, well, they played with injured Julius Randle because they've had the same thing with Jimmy Butler on the other side. But the guys who needed to step up, Barrett's playing very well right now. Um, uh, Brunson played a tremendous game the other night, and the Knicks did it with Randall playing at probably his best game of the playoffs, but he kind of ran out of gas in the fourth quarter, and they had to do it basically with six guys because Hart was in foul trouble most of the game. A very important part of this team since he was acquired. I think this team has learned something. I think from this game 5, I think the momentum will carry them a little bit tonight, and I expect, if nothing else, them to play a much better game in Miami tonight. And if they win, I think they know if they win, the ball's back in their court as they'll be going back home for Game 7. And I still think the Knicks win this series, not because of the odds of Miami's due to lose a game either. That'll help. But
Yeah, it would help. It's going to be interesting. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit nervous just because, as you said, it's mainly how last Sunday looked. And I do see a lot of fans blaming Thibodeau. Oh, it's his short rotation. Well, 2 weeks ago, you was lauding how genius it was, shorting rotation, admitting you made a mistake on certain guys. So two things can't be true. That's probably what got you to the playoffs. So I have a very hard time praising him for the last half of the season, then
yeah.
saying, "I know you're destroying this team. You can't have it both ways."
No, and I'll buy a little bit of that argument that he rides his horses too hard during the regular season sometimes. Um, but that's the way what he believes in. In the playoffs, you're going to shorten your rotation. Everybody does, and you're going to ride the guys who got you there, and that's what he did in Game 5, and that's what he's going to have to do tonight. Again, I don't expect to see anybody get significant minutes off the bench other than Hartenstein and Hart. Other than that, I mean, you'll get a few minutes out of a couple other guys, Toppin probably, but not major minutes, and unless Randall can't go that many minutes. To me, this game, Brunson's going to play well, I'm sure, tonight. This game comes down to R.J. Barrett continuing. He's played pretty consistent basketball, I think, in this series. I think he stepped it up from where he was in the regular season, and I think he might be the key to this game tonight. And Josh Hart staying out of foul trouble. He's more important to this team than people realize.
Yeah, I agree. But I think RJ's probably the only player. What up to his levels during a playoffs to shout out to him. And Hart is very important. He cannot get in foul trouble. I think he wanted it a little too much the other night, and that got
Yeah,
in him into foul trouble. Shout out to Scott. Celtics Knicks conference game would be awesome.
I agree
It
with that.
would be a little bit old school there as well. Time will tell. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit nervous, mainly just how last weekend when will that sort of rebody itself in Miami tonight. I think I hate to think what New York will be like at the weekend if they win.
You're right. It would be crazy. But again, here's the thing to remember too: if the Knicks should lose tonight, or even in Game 7 at home, they've been playing with house money because I said before the year, and a lot of people didn't expect them to even make the playoffs, much less win a series. And I said if they make the playoffs, win a series, not in the play-in game either by the or play-in tournament, but in the real tournament, um, it was a successful season. So they're kind of playing with house money now, which I would hope takes a little of the pressure off them tonight. But there will be a faction of people out there who say this is a huge disappointment because we got this far. We should count ourselves lucky that we've got a chance to get to the final because they don't reseed here in the NBA because you're not playing the Sixers or the Celtics or the Sixers or the Celtics in this round, which really they ought to be. But again, if you're not going to reseed, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I know Rick was asking something about the Suns. Was he asking a
He
question or
mentioned
was it?
hopefully they play better and don't quit like the Suns quit last night against the Nuggets.
Yeah, there is that. I wanted to ask you, Keith, how do you view Kevin Durant? Because it's a couple of years removed now. Um, I do think there is an argument. Look, if he is the guy, what everyone says he is, in a clutch moment, he needs to up his game. If it means that much to him about his legacy, winning without Steph, his chances of that is dwindling with every season because he's not going to be a guy what plays really deep past the average age of
No,
retirement just because his injuries will keep picking up, I think.
exactly. His body's not going to allow him to do that. And this was probably, in my mind, Dan, this might have been his best chance because he still had a good wingman in Booker. Um, not Steph Curry, but he's a very, very good player. But this will haunt him forever if the only championship he wins is with the one that he won with Steph Curry. And listen, to me, I think it's a bit of a. I still think Kevin Durant is a great player. He hasn't been healthy enough during his career, but you can't tell me he doesn't want it because if you remember right, he came back and played in that championship series when he shouldn't have and ruptured his Achilles because he got out there and tried to give it what he could. And that was an ugly, ugly injury we saw on national TV that night. But, he wants to win. He wants to win badly. Um, some of the decisions he's made in his career, like coming to the Nets and saying, let's get Kyrie in here. And, those weren't good decisions. But I don't think Kevin Durant's a bad guy, and I think he gets a bad rap a little bit. But chances are he's probably not going to win. I hate to say on his own because nobody wins on their own. But he's going to have that Steph Curry thing hanging over him probably forever because I don't know if it's going to happen now.
I agree. Look, the mistake he made was picking the Nets, then Kyrie talk him into it because that just showed you that he isn't really what he wants everyone to think he is. Because look, if LeBron wanted to go somewhere, can you see him letting his side man talk him out of it? I think that just shows he's a very good player, and I think he wants to be the leader, but I think he likes to delegate some of the decisions at times. And there's nothing wrong with that. but it's maybe cost him a little bit of his legacy.
Yeah, probably. I mean, his best. He'd been better off if he won one early in his career with Oklahoma City when him
Yeah.
and Harden and Westbrook were together and had some great teams, and they had one chance, and it didn't work out for them. And that was probably the best way for him to seal his legacy. So his legacy isn't what Scott says here. It is that basically he's a player for hire that goes where he thinks he can win. A lot of guys will tell you about that. That's LeBron's MO too, except for when he went back to Cleveland and won with probably inferior talent to a lot of other teams, other than the whack
Yeah,
job.
it's interesting. I personally think how I view the modern day NFL, and there's nothing wrong with this. They're all a player for hire because they all bounce around the league. So,
It's a good point.
the I think he'd make a good storyline if he did get that title away from us because it's a lazy narrative. Oh, he only won a title because he went to Golden State. I think he's a player that deserves a title to his name. So if it's this important, I'd like him to win it. I'm not sure it'll happen. I think it's going to be interesting. Who knows? Maybe Russ, Harden, and KD will team up
Oh my God,
somewhere again.
that'd be funnier now. Maybe he should go back to OKC now and help those kids win. Maybe that would cement his legacy. I don't know, but that's probably not going to happen either.
I don't know. I would worry about his health, but I'd still love him at the Knicks. Just overall, that superstar thing. They've got enough talent. I think it'd make a cool story. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I wouldn't hate that.
No, and again, I look at healthy. When he's 100% healthy, he's still one of the top five guys in the game. But again, that doesn't happen often enough. And actually, I'm thinking about Scott's comment, and I don't know that Phoenix was actually going to be the best place for him to go if he wanted to win because Chris Paul is definitely on the downside of his career, not nearly the player that he was when they went to the finals even a couple of years ago and lost to Milwaukee. Booker's a great player, but other than that, I wouldn't say they're loaded with a, over the top
Yeah,
talent. I mean, it's a good team.
I'd rate. I've said this a few times. Chris Paul. This sounds harsh, but I find him somewhat irritating at times because he gives the bearing of someone what's got X amount of titles, but he's on. He's had opportunities to go somewhere to win, and he doesn't want to get out of that contract, which is his decision. But he's got to decide: does he want that title, or does he want to take this so the team can build around his game's clearly diminished a little bit, but that contract's killing them. The Durant move it wasn't the best place for Durant, but it was the only team willing to pay the price what was necessary to get them. And some of their strength was that they had so much depth and they surrendered a lot of that. The irony is they might have won if they hadn't surrendered that depth.
That's a good point. That's a great point.
Um, so Keith, moving on to baseball, how you feeling about your Yankees at the moment?
Well, not great. You know, Aaron Judge is back, which we're happy about, but we lost to Tampa again last night in ugly fashion, 8-2. Can't panic because they're 21-18, and they're 9 games out of first place. But if the Rays hadn't got off to this hot start, we wouldn't be complaining about this. And with 3 wild cards, I don't think, which I'm not crazy about, by the way, but there's no reason to panic right now. The problem is we still have the same problems we started the season with. And I said before the season, I know you weren't with me all these Fridays leading up, and I knew Rondon coming in here was not going to be the best move they could make. And we have yet to see him pitch yet. Severino says he can pitch, and just like last fall, the team's not willing to let him pitch because they don't think he's ready, or I don't know what reason they can possibly have if Severino says he's ready to pitch and his people say he's ready to pitch, how they cannot put him out there. And we got a huge hole in left field that just continues to look bigger and bigger as the games go by. Um, will they make the playoffs? I have no doubt about that. But I have no reason to think this team's going to play any better against the best teams than they have in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I actually think they might shape up worse than last year. Just everyone's that year older, so your substandard players will probably be a bigger anchor around your necks. And look, a lot of this is a nick on dime it a lot in regard to their pitching staff, and they are what wins you championships. The reality is, and they decided to roll the dice and be fairly inactive. Bring some young guys in, which I actually think the young guys are a lot of the bright spot of the
I agree.
season. But that being said, they needed to win more, and nothing what they've done this season to prepare says that they'll have that postseason success. So I think it's going to end remarkably similar to the last two seasons, sadly.
I'd like to know where all the guys that were arguing me in some of the Yankee groups and chats about this is the best rotation in baseball. And I said, are you kidding me? Severino, we don't know if he's going to pitch an entire year. Rendon had 2 good years, but if you look back at his track record in Chicago, he can't stay healthy. And when he does, he's very inconsistent pitching in this type of market. San Francisco is a big city. It's not like New York or even Chicago. And I didn't think he was a good fit. We don't even know if he's a good fit because he can't get himself on the mound. The rumors in New York this week where he's not going to pitch this year. His wife went on Twitter and said that's BS, but you know, I got to see him before I believe it's not true. So,
Um, I agree. And yeah, shout out to young Anthony Flope. He's probably the thing to hang on your hat on if you're a Yankees fan.
yeah,
More for the future than now. He's doing a decent job, but he's definitely one what developmental player. What's your opinion been of him recently, Keith?
I listen with the pressure that's on this kid. I think he's played remarkable, carried himself well. He's not hitting, for real high average, but he's getting on base. He's stealing bases. He's making most of the plays he needs to make in the field, which is all we need at shortstop. We don't need a guy to be Ozzie Smith out there. He's just got to make the plays he's supposed to make. And I think he's handling himself very well here. There's no reason, as I watch his approach, he'll hit. He may not hit, more than whatever. He might hit 260 this year, but he'll have some moments. He'll hit. He has some pop. You saw him in his first grand slam the other night. He's got some speed, and he also, like I said, he's a kid who gets it. His approach to the game is really good. And I think he's going to have a long, long career here. May not be all at shortstop. Who knows? Peraza's probably better than him defensively. One of those, he's the one playing other positions right now. But at some point, he could be the shortstop. But I like both these kids. I don't care where they play. I think they could be the second base shortstop combination for a long time in whichever position they both end up in. And I like them a lot. And they've added something to this team. You're right. They're the lone bright spot. A little bit of energy this team was lacking before.
Yeah, I agree. When he hit that grand slam, past guest of mine, Bobby D, who coached him when he was about 13, sent me a text of the fit he videoed when he hit a grand slam. He was sitting with his parents to say they were going crazy
That's cool.
is beyond its statement. I'm actually going to post it on the Let's Talk Sports YouTube channel later, and he sent me a photo of when young Anthony saw him up in the stands. He was reaching his hand up to him, his face lighting up, and it could have been any other kid seeing a family member or close friend up in the stands. So it was a fun moment. Him sending that to me.
That is pretty cool. I like to hear stories like that.
Um, so Keith, that pretty much wraps up the show because we've got a few things to discuss after the show. I know we've got a few interviews lined up, but what's your Sunday stream of consciousness looking like this week?
Well, we should have Jim Beringer back with us live. He did a tape segment for me last week, which went over very well to catch us up on the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I expect to have him live because congratulations to Jim. He won his own hockey championship here last Sunday. So good kudos to him. He'll be on, hopefully. And we'll obviously dive into everything in the Major League Baseball world that we've touched on today. More Jets, Giants, talk about the schedule. And the Knicks, hopefully, will be playing in Game 7. And we'll be talking about that as well. So lots to talk about there.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, congratulations to Jim. He sent me a few texts with photos of the day. So yeah, good to see. Thanks for that, Rick.
I think that's Rick giving a little shot to Carlos at the same time with the cliches. That's awesome, Rick. Well done there. And thank you.
Yeah, as always, we appreciate your support, Rick, Scott, as well. Other comments drive any show, so always good to know someone's out there listening to what you have to say.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
So everyone, be sure to check Keith out on Sunday. I'm going to be more limited this week and take a bit of time off. Definitely Sunday will be off. I think I might have a show tomorrow, a soccer show with ex-Ireland international Adrian Coote. So if you're Premier League soccer fan, be sure to check us out. And yeah, all what remains is for me to thank you, Keith, for joining me today.
Thank you, Dan, and you continue to hang in there, buddy.
I will do. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And with a bit of luck, me and Keith will be back next week. And until then, let's talk sport, fans. Thanks for watching.
Happy Mother's Day weekend.